Picture this. Me, Reese Witherspoon, in London, ordering fish and chips so often they might start wrapping me in paper. I'm traveling with my Wells Fargo autographed Journey card, so I earn rewards wherever I book travel. 5 times points with hotels, 4 times with airlines, 3 times on restaurants and other travel, and 1 point on other purchases. Imagine getting rewarded for eating a toad in the hole. Wait, what is a toad in a hole?
Visit wellsfargo.com/autograph journey. Terms apply.
Whether it's a movie night or just midday, Skinny Pop is a salty snack that keeps on giving. Made with just 3 simple ingredients for an irresistibly delicious taste and a large serving size that lasts. Deliciously popped, perfectly salted. Skinny Pop, popular for a reason. Shop Skinny Pop now.
What if an appliance emergency didn't have to be? If your appliances suddenly decided they were done, don't stress. Best Buy has you covered with a wide variety of major appliances from trusted brands, in stock and available now. So you don't have to worry about laundry piling up, refilling the fridge, or that big dinner party you're hosting. Because Best Buy has the knowledge and expertise to get you the right appliance for your home. Learn more at bestbuy.com. Best Buy. Imagine that.
Daniel, that was perhaps the best performance under Ten Hag so far.
Definitely the best performance under Ten Hag, and one of the best in the post-Fergie wilderness years, TM,
Yeah.
I would say.
I think that's probably fair.
A couple of good ones under Van Gaal, maybe 3 really good ones under Ole, like the 2 City wins and Paris. Yeah, that was very fucking pleasing.
It really was. I mean, total domination against I think we knew how Conte's team would play. I mean, they do tend to sit back and try and break, but even with nominally a man extra in midfield, United dominated in there, and it was just really not only great performances from most of the players, but also Ten Hag came up with a brand new midfield system in order to dominate this game, which was really interesting, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, as you said, the matchup is good for us. I actually saw a message I sent to a mate on Wednesday morning that said, they're crap, the matchup is good for us. Because I thought if you play 3-4-3 and United play in midfield, I thought it would be Casemiro, Bruno and Fred, plus the way the fullbacks are, you're going to struggle to get the ball. And it does feel like they're just hoping that Kane or Son do something. And I thought I didn't want Conte as United manager, because I didn't want to have to watch Conte football, but also there was also a feeling that he was one of yesterday's men.
That might be true.
The Chelsea team with which he won the league, but that was an amazing performance from him. I think they lost to Arsenal badly, and then there was maybe an international break, and he thought about it and was like, right, and he decided he was going to play 3 at the back, box midfield, and then they went on that ludicrous winning run. I mean, that was an amazing achievement, but that team with Victor Moses at wing back would not win this league. And it didn't feel like, from the players he signed in the summer, he spent 100 million quid turning them from a team that can contest the top 4 into a team that can contest the top 4.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Ten Hag, and if you look at the difference in players, right, he's buying slightly older players because he's a guy for now, and presumably wants to fuck off back to Italy as soon as he'd get a job that he'd take. Whereas Ten Hag has bought younger players who he thinks are going to go and be something a bit more. So Richarlison is someone I think, for example, has some attributes. Who always, when he was at Everton, I thought that his top level could make him play somewhere better. But at 24, he's unlikely to develop into something that you want to spend 60 million quid on. Whereas Ten Hag's bought players a bit younger.
And he can't get in the side either. So,
and I mean, him getting injured, he talked about Spurs' system, I thought was quite good for them because it meant they could get that extra man into midfield. Yeah. And they didn't do them any good. Like Bissouma's another one who might be a top 4 player, but he's not going to elevate a top 4 team into title challenges. Whereas the players Ten Hag has bought, Anthony and Martinez, are players he thinks could go on to be among the best in the world. And
it was really very. I mean, with Basuma, Bentancur, and Højbjerg in there in Spurs' midfield, that's a really prosaic midfield, isn't it? They weren't going to do anything with the ball. They're not there to
have
play football.
He wanted to just have two of them. I mean, how are you going to get anything?
I mean, I think Højbjerg is someone I just think is crap.
Yeah,
and I mean, obviously, like crap in it, like
aggressively average. Yeah, sure, he's better than you or me in there, but
yeah, exactly. But it's so he's just so slow and should not be playing in a team that is trying to be in the top four. And I mean, Tottenham, they got ravaged by Arsenal. They got ravaged by Chelsea as well and got away with it at the end. So, but what you said about Ten Hag and the midfield formation is getting. I'm not just basing this on one game. I thought it when we signed Eriksen that I still wasn't certain I could see a way for the midfield not to be Bruno. Whoever we signed turned out to be Casemiro and Fred or McTominay. And you could you could play.
We'll see. It might still be horses for courses. I mean, Fred played this really kind of weird position in that it was almost like a double 8 with Bruno. Did Bruno play deeper or did Fred play further forward?
I think both of those things. Both of those things, because and I think the thing with Fred is he is United's best player at winning the ball high up the pitch. But
sure,
you could definitely say, well, against the team that are going to sit just packed with defence, then you might want Eriksen's guard, and you might. But part of me also thinks that in order to play at that tempo that we played at last night against anyone, Fred is probably more suitable than Eriksen. But obviously, you want options. Not every player is going to play well in every game, so I'm not saying that it should just be that team that plays every game. But I think in the big games, you would almost definitely want that midfield. But even in some of the other games, because it means that you're winning the ball higher up the pitch, and it doesn't matter who it's against, that you're then able more easily to build and sustain attacks. Whereas, because if you think we've got Bruno, and then we've got Anthony, and we've got Sancho, who are both of those guys are sort of playmaking wingers.
Yeah.
Then you've got the fullbacks getting forward, and you've got a centre-back that can properly play. That ability of Fred in particular, but McTominay could probably do it as well, to win the ball in the final third, might be more useful than Eriksen's beautiful passing. I don't know. It's something I thought when we signed Eriksen, and it's something I'm still thinking now.
I mean, I think it's horses for courses. It's control of the ball when you want control of the ball. It's hard to do that sometimes with Fred. Now, if you've got enough players in there that can play the ball, that are alternatives that get into the half spaces, that use the ball in smart areas, and you're using Fred as a modern day Ji-sung Park in some fashion. I'm not playing either of those down to say that, to win the ball high up the field, because if you win the ball high up the field, your smart players can then use it.
Park did kind of piss me off in that it felt like a team of that quality should not have been playing a winger who you kind of hoped the ball went the other way. Like, he took someone away, like great movement, great running.
Yeah.
I found Park frustrating, and it's not
well, he was.
I thought he added to the team or any of that. It's just I felt like a team of that quality didn't need necessarily to have a player like Park. But I tell you what reminded me of a little bbit is that if you look at Liverpool now, to me, like their decline is partly an age thing, but it's also the big change was when Wijnaldum left and they signed Thiago, who was obviously a better footballer than Wijnaldum, but the way that whole team worked was 3 Starkers running you off the pitch in midfield.
Yeah.
That then meant you couldn't get down the other end, but also it meant that the fullbacks could then basically be playmakers because
they had to change their system. You're right.
And then the wide attackers could go for goal. And then as soon as you just change like one little piece of that, then factor in the idea that like Henderson just can't set that kind of tempo anymore because he's 32. But it was that change of Wijnaldum for Thiago, I think, that even though Thiago scored that one goal that probably someone wrote a thesis about in The Athletic and has played some nice passes here and there, which some people seem to think is him dominating the Premier League. That team is not the same, and he is the main reason for that. And I guess I sort of wonder if that's the case because United are looking to try and dominate games and to make games fast and hard. that it's that kind of hybrid of City style and Liverpool style. I do wonder if they need someone a bit more physical in midfield, but I don't know. That's what it reminded me of anyway.
Yeah, no, I think it's all fair analysis. In a different kind of game where you have a team that will sit deeper, not that Spurs really try to express themselves so much of this game, but that will sit even deeper. I think Eriksen's ability on the ball is even more important. He keeps United moving. I just thought it was interesting the solution Ten Hag came up with. It shows he's both a manager that has a system he wants to play. It is fairly high tempo, but it is about dominating the ball, right? It's not gegenpressing, it's not tiki-taka. There's some kind of hybrid there. It's his own thing. But he's also a really pragmatic coach that will come up with solutions for particular games. And look, he said like the other thing he did, of course, was bring in Rashford for Ronaldo. I'm sure we'll get onto a bit of this. But he basically said it post-match after the weekend's game. He brought Rashford on to create space because Rashford's pace creates that space. Now, Rashford missed a bunch of chances last night. Could have made it an even bigger score. Perhaps an even more justified score based on the pattern of the game. But it certainly meant that Spurs had to think about what was going behind them. And it gave United much more of the ball in front of Spurs.
That's the thing, because I think there was this people saying, well, Ronaldo would have buried those two chances at the end of the
He wouldn't have been in a position.
But he wouldn't have had those chances. Like, you might have had the header, but you wouldn't have had the one that Rashford squared to Fred, which was an absolutely obscene piece of behaviour. By the way, passing to him from there. But,
Mark Hughes would never have passed from that angle, would he?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, just having Rashford just immediately makes you more dynamic than having Ronaldo. And I mean, Shearer was talking about that maybe Bruno was playing better without Ronaldo. And I don't really think it was so much that as the whole team was playing better without Ronaldo, because it just changes the way they're able to play. But on Bruno, because he's been getting people slagging him off recently. And I tweeted last night that I wonder if it might be time for, not time, but I wonder if United's best team might be Fred, not Eriksen, just partly to see how many messages I would get saying, just leave out Bruno. But I think that the idea of because with him, he's previously everything went through him. Yeah. And he's having to learn a slightly different position. And it is therefore reasonable to show some patience with him in that aspect, because he is good. People talk like he hits Hollywood balls, like he doesn't understand how to play football aside from that. When it seems to me nonsense. That United were getting so little decent possession that he did that because he had to, and that was what he was there for. And we saw against Liverpool, he played that kind of number 8 position really well. Yep. And he played it really well last night as well. And now the team is functioning as that enables him to function much better.
And look, United just have more options now, more creative options than a year ago, many more. And Sancho, who wasn't brilliant last night, but I think he was actually pretty effective in the positions he took up. And Anthony and Eriksen when he plays, and Casemiro, because he is good on the ball, not brilliant but good, gives United just much more options for passing. And Bruno, the irony, of course, is Ronaldo's dumped out of the team, and Bruno's playing the position he plays for Portugal, which is much more of a double number 8. And look, he can do that perfectly effectively. Last night, much more. I mean, cautious is not the right word, but much more of a number 8 with the ball, wasn't he? His pass percentage completion was over 90% last night. It's because he was using the ball sensibly and not having to play the killer ball every single time.
Because you're getting so much more when you're dominating possession like that. You can be patient. There's when you're trying to play dynamic, fast attacking football. I guess there can be the temptation just to try and play that killer ball because it's sort of you're in that habit of doing everything quickly. But yeah, the more of the ball you get, you can choose how you use it more carefully. And what I've really enjoyed in all the last 3 games actually is you've been able to see the progression, because in that game against Demonia, it didn't look like United were going to score, I didn't really think, in the last 20, but as we talked about this last week, they stuck with it. They didn't panic and they kept doing the same thing. And against Newcastle, they really did look like they were going to score in the last 20 and had quite a good amount of control in that game. So even though it was a 0-0 draw and it was frustrating, I sat there thinking, actually, I felt like I've seen some progress. And
for sure, yeah.
what we saw last night felt like a continuation of that. I remember
a culmination of some of that. Yeah,
I remember watching a game, Tottenham against Everton. I guess probably would have been about 2015, 2016 on a Sunday afternoon, and Spurs just ran Everton off the pitch. I think they won 2-0, but they absolutely devastated them with how quickly they did everything. And I didn't know it at the time because I don't watch Spurs every week, but I remember mentioning it to someone once who is a Spurs fan, said that was the day that it all changed, where they really saw Pochettino's vision for how he wanted that team to
life,
play.
yeah.
And that game sort of felt a little bit like that. Although I think that we were closer to it than Spurs were, because we played really well against Liverpool, really well in parts against Arsenal, well against Everton. Mm-hmm. There was a big difference between what we saw last night and what we'd seen, but it felt like last night was a culmination of all the good things that we'd seen until this point. And the fact that we stopped tossing goals in all the fucking time as well.
Well, I mean, and it doesn't feel like Spurs barely had a chance. I mean, it's an internet meme, but Harry Kane in Martinez's pocket, no one's talking about Martinez's height anymore. That was as comfortable a defensive performance as you'll get.
I mean, we should still take the piss out of him for being short-ass, I think. But it was, it was a bit, like, the chatter about that was a bit weird, in that you could say this might be a potential problem, but this guy will never make it in our league. Just like, what are you talking about? Like, how, as if like, because who are you really talking about? Like, how many headers does Harry Kane score? Or Erling Haaland? Like, a few, but not many. How many goals does, what's his name, that donkey face when Chris Wood score? Almost none. I think what I really love about Martinez, in fact, there are a lot of things I love about Martinez, but is he really understands how to commit a semi-foul. Where you just use just enough force to make sure you get your own way, but not enough so that the referee can obviously penalise you. Like that foul against Ammonia, that was a red card.
Yeah, he's definitely got some of the dark arts about him. He's got good social media game as well, which is it's always quite amusing watching his Instagram. I think. No, look, he's fit in really well. I don't know where you'd rank him in terms of like the post Fergie acquisitions, but he's pretty high up there already.
Oh, already. I mean, we haven't seen, because at this point I probably still thought Di Maria was a good one. So,
that's true.
So there is that, but you can see...
How many games in before the Leicester game after Van Gaal shat himself and everything went to...
but he is just, he isn't prepared to accept bullshit. And from the players around him, that he expects to win, you can see, and that is transmitting to the player, to everyone else. I mean, that him and Varane, both of those playing well, is like there aren't many, if any, better centre-back pairings playing in the Premier League.
All right. We haven't seen any signs of Martinez getting injured at all. It's just, we just want to keep Varane fit, right? Because the drop-off in quality after that is quite steep. So...
Yeah. It is. I still imagine Lindelof would manage to cover the distance slowly.
Yeah, that's right.
But it is indeed steep. But
we can't leave talking about this game without mentioning old Cristiano Ronaldo, who stomped off down the tunnel on 89 minutes after he was humiliated by Elanga coming on as a sub. I don't know what's more humiliating, not getting on the pitch on 89 minutes or getting on the pitch on 89 minutes.
He refused.
Apparently so, refused to come on and then went off and left the ground. It's such a baby, really.
He's such
honestly.
An odd penis. Just the thing that I don't get about this is he's 37 years old. He tried to bugger off in the summer and he couldn't because no one wanted him. So if you look at it at that point, he's in training every day. He's seen the manager. He's seeing the team. He must be able to see that the team is getting better. Even if he can't fathom why he's not in it and what it is about him that makes it not suitable for him getting to be an impact sub in this team for the next couple of years on the money that he's on sounds to me like by far the best option that's going to be available to him. Maybe United release him from his contract and he gets to go, I have nowhere. But nothing that he has shown anyone in the last few weeks is going to make any of the teams that didn't want him in the summer suddenly decide that they must have him.
So
maybe he is a narcissistic sociopath. I mean, maybe like that might sound like hyperbole, but maybe that's just his personality type. Maybe he just cannot see the wood for the trees, not the Chris Wood for the trees, but he just doesn't. He doesn't see the big picture here, and he's only focused on the Cristiano legacy, the myth.
But that's it. Like if Ten Hag makes United good again, you could be part of that. And you could get another couple of years as that impacts up. And I don't get why you would decide that was beneath you, even though, like, do you not even have? I mean, probably not. You've got a wife. Do you not have any mates, like people that tell you when you're being a prick? I don't know.
No, he'll be surrounded by sycophants and yes men. Of course he will. So no one's going to tell Cristiano he's wrong. I mean,
like, not even his mum.
George Mendes should. As his agent, he's supposed to give him.
My mum's told me I've been a dickhead for much less embarrassing behaviour than what he perpetrated last night.
My wife insists that if I took a crap on the living room floor, my mum would clean it up for me. So apparently not.
Freud would have a field day with that.
It really would. Yeah, we used to live near the Freud Museum in London. But anyway, I just think I suspect he's so deeply narcissistic and just has no one around him going, hang on a minute, think about this. Otherwise, he wouldn't behave like this.
But he must even be having conversations with Ten Hag. He must say, "What? I don't know."
That's not on.
No,
look, this is another.
This is what you could have, or what are you getting otherwise? I don't know. I mean, yeah, he's just an old bloke, and that
he's been dropped for the Chelsea
way
game.
I can describe him.
And I mean, he's old, and his usefulness at this. I mean, most players don't make it this far. The fact that he's still earning £25 million a year netto at this stage, presumably for something more than just being a marketing figure. Presumably, but although maybe that's a big presumption in the case of United. So anyway, we'll see. Are we going to see him back? Because he's dropped for the weekend game. We've got 6 games after that until the World Cup. I mean, I guess they'll try and integrate him at some point after that.
Maybe it may also be that he just never plays for United again now. And I always wondered, because I felt like the way that Anthony plays felt like there might be some goals for him at both front at some headers for him, because Anthony does have the ability to put crosses in, which is something United haven't had for a while. He's got that Robin thing, hasn't he? Where you know what he's going to do, but stopping him doing it is still difficult.
Yeah,
but also he's another one with like just the right kind of mentality that United need, and when you see players with that mentality, it lifts those who don't quite have it, just them to have it as well. Just this whole competition for places thing, this new fad you could just see has made such a difference.
Good. Well, it's brought new life to Luke Shaw again. Second time that this has happened.
I also think we're seeing a bit more intensity out of Sancho.
I thought he was all right last night. I saw some negative commentary on the internet, but not as good as we'd like. I'd like it to. Yeah. Go on. I'd like him to get 75 to 100 touches a game.
Has he had a single really good game for United?
I don't think so. I mean, bits and parts. You could put together a highlight.
A nice highlight, yeah. You could put a very good YouTube highlights reel together, and you can see that he's got like beautiful soft feet and all the rest of it. But yeah, and he has affected some games, but I don't think I've ever watched a game and said Sancho was fucking excellent today. And it is about time that happened. But for now, with Martial injured and Ronaldo not playing, this front three is going to have, I guess, at least one ball game to see what he can do.
Yeah. He should get more of the ball. And that's partly on the team, that's partly on Sancho, just not wanting it enough. So. I mean,
one other thing that we should also credit Ten Hag for is he's really, really good at reading games. You can see that his substitutions have been top notch. He's also, apart from the City game, which he totally fucked up, he very quickly is sussing out who he needs to play in for what game. He didn't have to play Fred last night. I bet he probably could have played Eriksen. He could have played McTominay, but he stuck with Fred because he felt like he had a reason to. And Fred was crap against Newcastle. And it worked. And I don't know. I would assume we're going to see the same team at the weekend. That you wouldn't toss Eriksen into that for Chelsea away, would you?
No, probably not. If he's going to play a similar system, I mean, it is a bit different because Chelsea do keep the ball better. I mean, especially under Potter.
But then you're trying to get it from them.
Yeah.
And I think if you feel like, because Chelsea are a bit weak in midfield, whoever he plays, Kovacic, Jorginho, I'd be thinking can run them off the pitch, especially no Reece James. I'd be much more confident that we could run them off the pitch than pass them off the pitch with Eriksen. I would think that like if we were able to impose the same kind of game that we did last night, then we'll get more than enough of the ball. Whereas I just don't know if with Eriksen we'd be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I broadly agree that it points to there being a very similar side, if not exactly the same side. I don't know how much he's going to want to freshen up, given how many games there are. And there's Real Sociedad afterwards, which is an important game.
But hang on, isn't Sheriff first? They've changed the order. Yeah. It used to be that the team you played in the first game was the team you played in the penultimate game, and it's now gone the other way. So it now is...
Right, is a mirror.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay, Sheriff, yeah.
So, yeah.
Sheriff at Old Trafford. So, okay, that's a bit easier. So, you can make changes for that one. So, yeah. All right.
But it's nice to have some options. It's nice to like...
It is nice to have...
Instead of circling through the same mats after every disaster, it's that actually, yeah, there are some consequences.
Yeah, now the impact sub doesn't have to be Andres Pereira, does it? Or in fact, the starting player. No, it's good. And we can go confident. United will have played like all of the top half of the table, basically, before the World Cup and some difficult games there and got some really good results. So,
then when
there's been a mixed bag, but we can feel good about it.
There must be an easy run at some point because they haven't had one yet, really. But I mean, so what do we think this team can get to? Right? Think they could finish second?
I don't know. I mean, they're already quite a lot of points behind, so I think it's more realistically. So, how many points behind Arsenal is it going to be like 8 or something? Is it?
But with the game in
have
hand,
it in front of me. So yeah, it's that.
So 8 behind Arsenal. So they're 8 behind Arsenal. Yeah, I mean, beat them.
4 behind Spurs with the game in hand. So that's basically evens, and a point behind Chelsea. So that would suggest it's going to be super tight for 3rd, 4th, 5th. Let's assume Liverpool aren't as shite as they've been
and
so
Arsenal
far
haven't
this
played
season.
Chelsea or City yet either.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, I think it depends. If Arsenal have found a way of beating all the crap teams twice, which
yeah.
they may have done, then second would be difficult to get from 8 behind. But I mean, they didn't play. They were very lucky to get away with it against Leeds. So I mean, luck is probably not the right word. Actually, it was quite a chaotic game, and they had the benefit of those chaotic things in football that can go either way. As in, like Bamford missed a penalty, which obviously Ramsdale celebrated. And then they had there was a penalty that Leeds didn't get. There was one of those decisions that, like, not giving the penalty was the right decision, but once the referee's given it on the pitch, like sometimes they get overturned and sometimes they don't, I would say. Because, I mean, on that same day, United had that penalty that Sancho got that somehow wasn't one. So yeah, right. I felt like they had the marginal aspects of football's chaos went in their favour in that game. But watching it, I wondered if they're in the process of running out of form. But I mean, they still they don't actually have. I think they've got to play Chelsea, but they don't have many difficult games before the World Cup. I don't think they play City till afterwards. But I was wondering about this with the World Cup. What do you think you want which players are going to find? We're going to find it harder. Do you want your players at the World Cup playing, at the World Cup not playing, or not playing, or at home?
In which case they have a month off and will go cold, Yeah. So what do you do?
So
send them you send them on holiday for 2 weeks, don't you? And then come back and do pre-season training all over again.
Right, but it almost feels like the best thing is sort of
at the World Cup we're getting 5 games,
quarterfinals or something. Then there's not enough time for you to lose sharpness, but you don't have those extra couple of games or whatever it might be.
But, that might be the best result. I mean, United will have a fair few going,
and players that could go a long way as well. Like Bruno could go somewhere.
Could do
Varane,
Portugal.
Martinez.
Varane Martinez could do some distance. All the Brazilians. Well, we got 3 Portuguese and 3 Brazilians.
Yeah, but I guess there are some players that you're more able to do without.
Eriksen will go and be a key player at Denmark. Rashford probably will go. Sancho probably will not. Harry Maguire definitely will go. Luke Shaw will definitely go.
But yeah, it's about. It's about how far they go and how many games they're playing. I think because if you're there with the squad but you're not playing, that's also not good. I mean, I imagine the clubs will have contingencies where they're saying, "Dude, this is what you've got to do." But presumably the countries are also quite specific about what they want to be done. So, yeah, I mean, it does sort of feel like you want sort of quarterfinals
because otherwise they come back. Yeah, anyone makes the final, they come back and they're back into domestic action a week later
and dealing psychologically with either being a world champion or not being a world champion, both of which I imagine quite distracting.
Yeah, all good, I guess.
How did you celebrate?
I mean, we've never had a season like it, of course, and this all is going to impact a lot of clubs. I mean, Manchester City will have 20 players there, I imagine, something like that.
Well, Haaland's not going.
Haaland's not going, yeah.
And someone out, I think they've got some other good players that aren't going. I thought the other day,
but Edison, Stones, Cancelo, Diaz will all go. Grealish will go.
Yeah, I mean.
Algeria there? I can't remember, actually. There you go. Testing my World Cup.
Because basically, if they're playing, you're mainly just hoping that they don't get injured.
Yeah.
Because if they come back and they're still fit and they're not injured, then you start having options, depending, like you hope you get where you can rest them. Like you're hoping for some easy FA Cup draws, basically. And United have a big enough squad so that they wouldn't have to play Bruno every game necessarily. And then you're hoping that they'll be fit for the run, basically, at the end. But, yeah, I mean, Portugal are in a difficult group. They got Uruguay and Ghana in that group and South Korea. So, I mean, it wouldn't be that surprising if they didn't get out of that because they could easily not.
Well, hopefully they win it. Then Cristiano can just retire, never bother us again.
I don't feel I would enjoy seeing him win the World Cup. No, I would enjoy seeing Bruno win it, but yeah.
I mean, there's a bunch of weird people on the internet who would, and Alex Ferguson. Apart from that, I feel like the tide has turned against him.
I mean, well, he's one of those.
As someone much smarter than I said on the internet, the dildo of consequences rarely arrives with lube, and I feel like the consequences are stacking up for Ronaldo now.
Yeah, I mean,
anyway,
I just can't. What? I mean, the weird thing is, I mean, yeah, some of the players seem to genuinely think he's a good bloke. Like Dallo.
I think they're starstruck. Honestly, I think they're starstruck, and so are his supporters in the media. Like the fact that he'll come over and say hi at half time or whatever. So.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think he's interested in?
Money, fame, perception of greatness, competition with Lionel Messi.
Sunbeds.
Yeah. Procreating.
Abs.
Abs.
What a guy. I mean, he is the best player I've seen at United by fucking miles. I mean, I hate to say it, but because there are others who are much more likable. But yeah, like he's the best player I've ever seen at United. Probably the best player I will ever see at United. Definitely none of the players who are at United now are going to get anywhere near as good as he was. And yet...
At his peak, no.
And yet, what a bell end.
What a mega, massive, huge, purple bell end. Yeah. For the club's sake, they should find a way to bin him off. Unfortunately, they should have done that in the summer.
I didn't understand why they didn't.
Yeah.
Because, especially when they were struggling to scrape money together for players, that just seemed like an easy way of generating some.
Yeah.
But
freebie, here you go. Anyone who'll take him. Maybe they explored that option and that wasn't available either. So, well, he won't be at Chelsea. So this is the vision of the new United without Cristiano, winning games, playing good football, playing good football under a manager who seems to not only have something about him, but a real plan to get there as well. So I don't want to get all ahead of ourselves here and say United are back, but you can almost see a path to being back.
It does feel like we won't be as crap as we have been again, because the players are too good now to be that crap. It would take some injuries, like the levels of last season. I think we shouldn't have to despise the players quite so much for a little while now.
And apart from 5 signings in the summer, and Ronaldo wasn't part of it last night, so 4 who are really integrated into the team, it's the same group of players. So Ten Hag has turned around the fortunes of some of them.
That's why I despised them so much, because I knew they were better than that. It wasn't like watching Mark Higgins or Alan Brazil or Peter Davenport or Mal Donaghy or that kind of nonsense, where it was just like players who just knew were crap. It's players who knew were better because they'd shown you that they were better. Like, admittedly, like sometimes in empty stadia, but they'd still they'd won at City twice and they'd played really well in both of those games. They'd also gone on long runs of beaten almost everyone, and they'd handed out some fucking beatings as well in the process. Proper thrashings all those United handed out. So we knew, like, they were at that stage where they were sort of at the 80s United could beat anyone on their day stage, good enough to beat everyone every day stage. And then they suddenly collapsed, but that didn't suddenly make them crap. It was much more mental weakness than technical inability. And that was what made them so fucking hateful. I mean, that was why Ralph hated them so much, because they weren't putting it in, and they weren't there mentally. And it was that, obviously you can lose games and have desert, but they lost 4-1 to Watford.
Yep.
That is, and that was not a lack of effort either. That was a lack of focus.
No,
it was a lack of fortitude.
Yeah, the only time that happened. So, but we moved on. And I look, the City game, Ten Hag clearly got some things wrong there with the system and being too open, and that was a punishment beating that he'll learn something from.
Like all the best punishment beatings.
Yeah. All right, better leave it there. Interview this week with Ryan O'Hanlon, if I can say Ryan, who's written a new book called Net Gains, if you're into stats and the history of stats, which, Dan, you'll like, because he starts, as I open my interview with him, starts on the history of football being inextricably linked to the history of masturbation. Good stuff. All right, this week I'm with author Ryan O'Hanlon, who's written a new book out this week called Net Gains, diving into the history of data and analytics in football, starting with the importance of masturbation to the history of football, which I thought was a great place to start when thinking about where the club game has come from. Yeah, let's go for it. Yeah, got any analytics for us?
I don't want to say anything else. I'll definitely get myself in trouble.
Yeah, I won't reveal the punchline of that particular one. You'll have to go get the book. But it plays an important role in many clubs, including partially in the birth of Newton Heath and Manchester United. So anyway, it's a book about analytics. There've been a few before it across different sports in football. And I thought think about what was the inspiration for the book. Why did you want to dive into this? Tell us a little bit about Ryan O'Hanlon and why this subject.
Yeah, so I played competitive soccer, as I call it, growing up in the US. Played Division I college soccer, was like a decent holding midfielder. Been referred to as the Bastian Schweinsteiger of the Patriot League, which is not really a compliment. More of like the Man U era Bastian Schweinsteiger, probably. And so I was also a nonfiction creative writing concentration person who also happened to be a lot better at math, did way better on my math SATs, but wanted to be a writer for some reason. And so became a magazine editor kind of out of college, worked at a couple magazines. Then I worked at this website called Grantland, which isn't around anymore, but Bill Simmons, ESPN site. And I was an editor there. And a lot of the writing at Grantland was a lot of the journalism was very analytics fluent, not like super nerdy, but very conversational, able to use various numbers to kind of try to put an objective point on what you're saying. And I was an editor for like baseball, football, and soccer and basketball. So like in the US, we have the story of Moneyball that was published in the early 2000s. And then like basketball sort of followed the exact same trajectory with like the same arguments between scouts and like data people over like what you can measure, what you can't measure. And then even like data people being like, actually, you're right, we can't measure that. We shouldn't overthink this. But like that pattern happened. And then kind of the same thing is now happening in the NFL. So I kind of felt like I was kind of like, it just felt inevitable that a similar thing would happen with soccer, even though the center, the brain of the operation is not in the US. And so I'd felt like I kind of had a little bit of a cheat code to kind of maybe see where things were going. So I became interested in that side of the game and just more like the efforts to kind of quantify what's happening on the field, and like then what the efforts to quantify what's happening on the field tell you about how the game works and how maybe it could work better. And so that got me kind of interested in this specific topic. And then I think I kind of got burnt out being an editor, and the idea of writing a book where you kind of get to take your time, delve into an 800-word aside about masturbation, that appealed to me a lot. So I kind of threw this idea around to an editor, and I had some specific ideas, and he kind of encouraged me to just do like the whole thing about analytics in soccer rather than focusing on like a specific team or something. And then you kind of report it out, see what stories are interesting, see who's a good interview, and you kind of piece it together from there.
Yeah, because you focus on a lot of the characters. I mean, not one character as in Moneyball, but Luke Bourne and some of the names people will know, Michael Kelly, Chris Anderson, Ted Knudsen, will all be familiar to people. And you sort of tell the story of analytics and its journey through them. And where would you think we are in the journey? I mean, if baseball is sort of hyper analyticified, I just made that word up, where is football? Because there's a lot that you mentioned in the book, actually, 97% of the time a player doesn't have the ball. So what are you actually measuring when they don't have the ball? So where are we on the journey?
That's a famous Cruyff quote, actually. So I would say like the big kind of 2-track takeaway, I think, from the book is like, we're not even like baseball, everything isn't quantified, but because of the nature of the sport where it's just like an individual 1v1 interaction between the batter and the pitcher over and over and over again, very little interactions between the other players, that just makes it way easier to measure. So I think baseball, like compared to all the other sports, baseball is at a 10 in terms of what they know about the sport, and then also a 10 in terms of the people that make decisions using that information, basically. And I think soccer is probably at like I'd say 4 in terms of the information that's been gleaned, and then like a 2.5 or a 3 in terms of how well it's being used.
There's a quote in your book, not enough information, too much data, which I think when I spoke to Omar Chowdhury a few years ago on the pod, he said something very similar. This was their goal, basically. Lots and lots of data. Can we actually glean something from it? Yep. But he cuts quite a frustrated figure, I think, in your book about his ability 10 years in to have actually influenced football at all with data. And do you get that sense from your investigations here that it still really isn't? In fact, even more telling is the quote where something along the lines of teams have an analyst, but mostly it's because they'd look bad if they didn't.
Yeah. I think it's like, I almost think it's easy. You go on, there's a ton of data being thrown around on Twitter. Everyone it's out there. It's impossible to avoid it. I think expected goals is like, it's on Match of the Day and stuff like that. There's still arguments about that stuff, but like all this kind of data that's out there I think potentially gives you a skewed sense of how influential it actually is. Like you mentioned Luke Bourne. He's kind of a bunch of people that I respect a lot in the US sports scene just essentially call him the best person in sports analytics, because he knows how to do all the in the weeds quantification, but then also was a front office person for the Sacramento Kings, so he also understands how to deal with the power structures within a team. And yet he was the head of analytics for Roma briefly. And I think when Roma made the semifinals, I think people like me, especially when they played Liverpool, it was very easy to be like, oh my God, look, it's two like analytics teams. They're in the semis. And then what he told me in the book is he barely had any impact on what they were doing. I think he said that Luciano Spalletti made him more espressos than he cared to count, but had no interest in analytics whatsoever. So if he's not having an impact, it's kind of like, who else is?
I guess in the sort of jock v nerds debate, football's still on the side of the jocks, at least for now. I mean, maybe that changes with the introduction of a new generation or something like that. I mean, Spalletti, of course, is a god amongst tactics nerds. Maybe not data nerds, though.
He's doing the Napoli look amazing so far this season. So yeah, and I think probably like, if it doesn't, it feel like you hear a new American billionaire has bought like a random team in Italy or Spain like every week now, and I think that will probably have an effect too. Not saying that is good that Americans are just buying teams, but I think coming from the American sports thing, just naturally they're going to have a different perspective and hire different people probably.
Well, there is a sense, I think, that US sports billionaires or PE funds who are coming into the European game have this, and Todd Bowley said it this summer, something to the effect of, we think we can do this better. And that does rub people in Europe up the wrong way a little bit. But also that there is that different perspective on how to run a sports franchise and how to get the best out of your investment. And so maybe that does make a difference to the European game.
Yeah. Yeah. But at the same time, I think one of the things, as I kind of, what I find interesting about this stuff in a way that I don't find the baseball stuff is interesting, is like, it is true that soccer is incredibly dynamic and hard to measure and might actually never purely be measured, or by the time we start measuring everything, the game will be played differently and the things that are being measured don't matter. So I think like coming in and thinking it's like, oh, like I know data, I got a Football Reference spreadsheet here and we're going to get promoted because of that, is also a completely, almost a worse way of kind of trying to make a difference, I think.
I don't know, Stefan Szymanski's done an update to his model that money spent on wages is still the largest determiner of success than anything else. And it's much more important than the coach, no matter how much we deify Pep Guardiola or Jurgen Klopp or Sir Alex Ferguson.
Yeah, I'm always amused by like a new coach comes in and like within the first game and his team wins, he kind of gets credited for the victory. And it's just like, yeah, he's a coach for like a week. I think we could probably give the players more credit for what happened here, or even like, not to go on a rant, but I just remember when Arsenal beat Tottenham recently, there was just a bunch of pieces that were like how Arteta shredded Spurs. And it's like, he seems like a good coach, but like, what about like Bukayo Saka or Odegaard? You know, I think they had a bigger impact. And I think it's, for whatever reason in soccer, maybe because it is so hard to understand, right? I think the manager gets a lot more credit than he does in American sports, which is kind of interesting.
Right. And there's a piece in the book where you talk about how the owner or the general manager goes and lifts the trophy in American sports. And the sight of, I don't know, Malcolm Glazer or any of his siblings lifting a trophy for United.
What would happen if United won their first title in however many years and the Glazers were just insistent on being out there to lift the trophy?
I mean, that's an interesting thought experiment, isn't it? Would the fans be placated because United had won, or see it as an opportunity to lynch him? And I'm not sure. Go 50-50 on that one. And so they have rarely turned up at Old Trafford, and when they have ample amounts of security. Yeah. For good reason.
Yeah, probably wise.
I mean, when you look across the different types of data, I mean, because you cover quite a few of them in your book, data around the game itself and the performance metrics, XG and so on, data around transfers, which Omar is very focused on, data around the value you get from transfers, and there's a whole piece in the book around Midtjylland and Brentford and that group there. Where do you think the biggest impact is, on the business side or on the playing side, and where do you think that might go?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the business side or the playing side, I mean, I guess it's hard to separate the two, I guess is what I would say. I feel like, I don't know. So the way I've heard it described, right, is if you think that all the sports are going to follow the baseball pattern, the baseball pattern was first Moneyball was basically about finding players who were good that other people didn't realize were good, basically. Then the second step in baseball was changing the way that the game was played with a lot more strikeouts, home runs, infield shift, stuff like that. And then the third phase in baseball now is like using data to improve players, and like improve like veteran players are suddenly like becoming like MVP level players all of a sudden. So if you agree with that, I think it's probably, honestly, the biggest impact right now is probably like prevention of making mistakes in the transfer market. I think it's harder to, so there's this idea in the NFL draft where, you know, you have this consensus board of who the best players are. And when a team reaches for a player, that player is likely to fail, because all it takes for a team to reach for a player is one team to overvalue a player. But if a player compared to that big board or whatever drops and gets picked, he's also likely to fail, because even though he seems like he's being undervalued on the consensus rankings, 30 teams are passing on him, which seems to suggest that maybe this consensus board is missing something. So I think like in that same way, it's almost most useful still to like know who not to sign, basically. Right. And, you know, not, Omar has the stat in the book where club record transfers across all clubs on average play 50% of the available minutes for their clubs, which is just, if you're going to spend ridiculous. 20% of your revenue on a single, not even a player, on the ability to then sign the player to a contract, you would hope that he would be playing 90% of the time or whatever. So I still feel like that's probably the biggest area where it can have an impact kind of right away.
So why have Manchester United managed to blow it in the transfer market for 10 years in a row? That's a kind of rhetorical question.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a you know, a few pages in the book where you look at that, and I'd say rightfully point to some of the mistakes of the past years.
Yeah. I mean, I think the easiest thing is like, it's almost like I feel like if you're using data in like the right way, it almost like forces you into some kind of like identity, right? Because it's like, we want players that check these boxes with this data, right? So that almost like forces you to be a little more focused. And I feel like, I forget, well, I think it was one of the Glazers basically just said, well, the transfer market isn't hard because everyone knows who the best players are, which obviously isn't true. So I think like, I mean, the thing I think with United, right, is like, you look at all the players they have, and it's just like, if you were designing a team to play a certain way and be cohesive, like you would never set out to stack all of those players on the same roster. Like, so I think like having like a identity that you're recruiting into, I think is probably one of the biggest reasons. And it's probably not news to you, that idea.
No, we've talked about it a lot for many. This pod has been going since 2009. So obviously, like for most of those years, we've had the picture clarifying in our mind of just how poor United have been in this aspect.
Started off on a high, though, at least.
Yeah.
First couple of years.
Yeah, that's right. Those were good years. Those are good years.
You could also argue that, like, if I want to be kind, like, perhaps there's some kind of curse to, like, essentially having unlimited money compared to the other teams. That, like, the Moneyball happened because the A's owners didn't want to spend a lot of money on players, so they were forced to, like, if Billy Beane had the Yankees budget, he would have targeted different players. And then in baseball, like, the Yankees and Dodgers have now copied the A's and stolen those methods, basically. So I wonder if that probably plays a bit into it too, if I had to guess.
Yeah, and I think you didn't really talk about it in your book, but the role of Ed Woodward there and his philosophy that you needed a fat squad, high asset values, because he's a banker, sort of like note this, and the need to play into the commercial line of Manchester United did play a very significant overweighted part in the recruitment strategy for sure. And from there, a lot of mistakes were made. We'll see whether that changes. I don't know. When you spend 70 million euros on a 30-year-old, as good as Casemiro might be, it suggests that maybe that strategy hasn't changed much.
Yeah, it certainly seems like different voices are getting certain things they're asking for in this past summer, but we'll see.
You also look backwards, and there's I think for sort of especially students fans of my age who support England, nominally at least, and have suffered much over the years, especially early in my childhood when football was not very good compared to what it is today. And you have a whole section on Charles Reap and the sort of redemption story around Charles Reap. And if people don't know, he's the man who analysed football and suggested that most goals were scored from 3 passes and got the data slightly wrong, and it led to generations of long ball football in England. Simplifying the story somewhat. But it's a fascinating story.
Yeah, it is a fascinating story. And to be honest with you, I sort of came into the book with a certain idea of how I was going to write about it, kind of write about it as, here's the story of, some people think he's kind of the first like data analyst across all sports, basically. Mm-hmm. Or he was like doing his notations right around when, I guess, this guy Branch Rickey started to do it in baseball, and kind of write about that, but also like a cautionary tale, right, of believing too deeply in what the data tells you and then looking at it in the wrong way. Because the idea, as you said, is he found that most goals were scored from short possessions, very, very few passes. So then he decided that, okay, we should try to have possessions with fewer passes. But ultimately, more goals were scored with shorter possessions because most possessions are shorter. But the average longer possession was more likely to actually lead to a goal. So that was kind of his error. But I actually stumbled across this paper by this guy Richard Pollard, and it was just like a defense of Charles Reap written in an academic way. And I was like, wow, like didn't know that was. I thought we'd all shook hands on this one and agreed on it. And I don't totally buy the defense of that idea that we just talked about, but I started talking to Richard, and it was really funny. The first time we talked, he kind of was like, yeah, like the passes thing was like, we did all this other work too. And he was like, yeah, Reap was very much into the idea of it's really valuable if you win the ball in the other team's attacking third. Right. And I was like, well, this was right after Liverpool won the Premier League. I was like, well, have you heard of Jurgen Klopp? And he was like, I haven't really watched a game in like 10 years. Then he was like, and Reap was also very into having a keeper that could accurately kick the ball long. And I was like, well, have you heard of Ederson, this player on Manchester City? And he's like, no, like I thought they were just doing like tiki-taka or whatever. And then I kind of met him, developed a relationship with him, visited him. And yeah, like they did a ton more stuff. And I think I came to have a much bigger appreciation for Reap, because I think what I kind of like it must have been really hard in like the 60s and 70s to come into this sport and be like, I just measured this sport and here are all these numbers. Here's why I'm right. And I think maybe he even had to like, partially the reason maybe he caught on with Watford and the other teams he caught on with and Graham Taylor was because he was such a kind of steadfast voice that maybe made it hard to ignore, even though ultimately that kind of not led to his demise, but led to the demise of his influence, I guess.
Yeah, but in winning the ball high up the field in the gegenpressing tradition, some of what he was arguing for, maybe indirectly, has come to pass. Although we did have to suffer for 30 years of long ball football in England before it all sort of died out. And of course, the opposite is true. There are fundamentalists on the passing side as well. You know, we had a coach in Louis van Gaal who I think was probably disappointed when United scored because it meant you turn over possession. Such was his love of passing the ball sideways. Not quite true. But it's a fascinating history of how analytics has like shaped our game and some of the people in it. I mean, how far can it take you, do you think, this? If we say that it hasn't really touched the surface yet, and although in the media, analytics is becoming prominent, and certainly in social media, if it's not impacting clubs like high up the food chain, in a really substantial way. Is analytics involvement in the game always destined to be limited? Is the Billy Bean story not likely to happen in football, or is Brentford and Midtjylland and clubs like that where it's most impactful?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, like, ultimately, I think it still comes down to just having the best players. Like, that's how you win. But the idea of identifying who the best players actually are, what that even means, like, what does it mean to be the best defensive midfielder? That could mean 100 different things for 100 different teams, right? Best fullback, Trent Alexander-Arnold versus Reece James, like Kyle versus Kyle Walker. They all play the same position, but like it's incredibly different things that they do. But I think, I think like if a team like United just like totally kind of bought into it and like, let's say even like hired Billy Bean, right? Because he co-owner of Toulouse and now a co-owner of AC Milan. So that's kind of a sleeping giant, if you will. I think like you'd probably see United just like challenging Manchester City on a consistent basis. But I think it's the hard thing, right? Is that it is still like such a random sport. Like someone like Brentford, right? They overachieved their payroll pretty aggressively in the championship, and then played pretty well, like for their payroll compared to the Premier League last year. But like they were still like 1 or 2 injuries or like a couple of just like unlucky results away from like getting relegated all of a sudden. Right. And then you lose all that money and it's like, good try. Like, there you go. So I think relegation one, like prevents people from maybe being as aggressive as they could be with stuff like this. Cause the only thing worse than getting relegated is like being actively vocal about how you're using analytics and getting relegated, probably.
The safe bet is to hire Sam Allardyce.
Yeah, exactly. But Sam Allardyce, who I didn't really get into this in the book, was kind of an early adopter of analytics to some sort with Bolton too. So yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not really answering your question, but I think Brentford is kind of the proof of like what it can actually do, because they've risen pretty aggressively without spending that much money, I don't think, over the years. I think obviously Liverpool is kind of famous for it, but I think that has played a role, but like also like just having Firmino, Mane, and Salah all be amazing. Sure. Like I don't think they expected probably any of them to be as good as they all were.
Yes,
having
right.
Van Dijk just suddenly, like no one thought Van Dijk was just the best center back in the world when they signed him. Having Trent Alexander-Arnold just grow up in Liverpool, like that's pretty random. Andy Robertson, like those, I think the Liverpool like story is worked because they like maxed out every player that they signed. And now I think you're kind of seeing this year where sometimes it doesn't go your way.
Right.
So I think the randomness...
Because inevitably there will be some failures even with data. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Or you have data on 800 fullbacks and still manage to fail, as United did with Aaron Wan-Bissaka. So you talked a lot about the past of analytics and a little bit about the future, and talk a lot about sort of innovation and what it means to a club. And we're both based in the US, where there is no relegation, and there's an argument in your book about whether that's an inspiration to innovation or not. Mm-hmm. And where do you come down on that? MLS teams, it's about championships set at the standard or something like that, but very well supported across the league. Are they innovating with data in the way other US sports?
I don't think it's at the same level as basketball or baseball. I don't even really know if I would say it's that much ahead of the Premier League. Maybe there's a little more widespread adoption because I don't know. It's interesting, right? Because it's like in some ways a salary cap maybe does encourage you to try to think differently, right? If you just can only really spend as much money as all the other teams in your league, even though that isn't exactly how a salary cap works, perhaps that spurs some innovation. But also like perhaps it doesn't, because like there's no relegation, so you're just guaranteed the share of the TV revenue each year, even if your team sucks.
So what's the incentive to invest in this new stuff?
Yeah, so I think I come down with soccer on the side that I think relegation probably is kind of a cultural disincentive, even though it should be a competitive incentive to do it, would be what I would say.
Great. And so what's your next project? Are you beyond this one, looking at other parts of the football world or onto a different sport?
We'll see. I was on another podcast and they suggested I try to write a book about what agents actually do in soccer. And I said,
right,
it'd be very interesting. Also might be dangerous to my health if I actually pursued that too aggressively. So I think we'll see. I mean, I have some theories that I might be able to turn into a book, but right now I'm just, I don't know. I really like the process of writing the book. I actually really enjoyed it. The process, and I've very much enjoyed our conversation, but the process of like having to promote the book doesn't fit that well with my personality. So I'm just trying to get through that before I dig into something bigger again, but I will let you know what it is as soon as I find it.
All right. Well, good luck with all the other podcast interviews. Again, it's Net Gained by Ryan O'Hanlon, and I believe it's out this week.
Yep. It's out the Tuesday of this week, whenever you're listening to this.
Probably listen to it on Thursday and Friday.
So it's out already. Probably.
There you go. Rush to the bookstores.
Yeah.
For a subject that could be dry, it's a really interesting sort of human read based around some of the characters and gives you some insight in how we got to where we got to today. So, yeah.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.